Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Cedric, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And I'm a little late on this week's podcast, been crazy busy. I actually was away on travel, went and saw my good friend Nate Sharp. Man, he's got an incredible facility. So I dropped in for his grand opening, visit with him on some amazing things that he's working on, potentially where I can help him in the future. So it was awesome. And then I was supposed to get back for my anniversary on Saturday. But as you guys know, air travel can be a little bit tricky nowadays, and so I ended up getting bumped like 3 times. So ended up having to stay in Seattle, and then flew out on Saturday, but didn't get home until the evening. Judy got home in the evening, so actually this week we're gonna have a little escape. We're gonna leave on Thursday and have a little couple days to enjoy each other's company, be together, renew our relationship. And I mean, it's been an amazing 34 years. Um, and it's just, I've been so blessed, but it's taken a lot of work. Taken a lot of commitment, dedication. Judy and I have learned to laugh together, to forgive each other, to work through challenges. And as you guys may know, we started a new podcast, and that podcast is called Into the Gray. And Judy and I are exploring a lot of things about becoming more seasoned, the things that we've learned, the things that we've experienced, how to deal with getting older, the things that we've experienced with our children, things that we would do differently, things um, that we've learned along the way that have given us insight and compassion and empathy. And it's been great. Judy's really leading the charge on that. So I invite you to go listen into the podcast. But Judy asked a question that will be in our next episode. She asked, if you could tell your 18, 20-year-old self, give them some advice in 3 key areas, what would that advice be if your 18/20-year-old self would listen? That's the big question. But what would you ask? And those 3 questions got me thinking about what would I tell my 18, 20, 24, 27-year-old self about being a dad, about being a husband. And I've thought a lot about this. And, just to give you some straight up insight, when I was a kid, I was looking forward to being married. I was looking forward to having children. I had a great dad, I had a great mom, and my mom and dad had a great relationship. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. But still, what would I tell my 18, 20, 24, 27-year-old self about being a dad, about being in a relationship? And so I've thought a lot about that. And I thought that I would share that with you guys, and maybe it would open a discussion between me and you. I mean, I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section. But also, if you want to talk one on one or suggest a topic, I would love to hear it. But I think the number one thing that if I were to go back and look at my kids, and when I first had my children, I didn't have my first child till I was almost 27 years old, right? And then we had one 2 years later, and then another 2 years later. And so basically from 27 to 35, Judy and I were having kids, and then we adopted kids. And so I think number one thing that I would tell my younger self is remember that they are kids. I mean, I think a lot of us men, we have this expectation that they're little men, right? They're little women, and they should be respectful, and they should be polite, and they should know everything, and they should stand at attention. I mean, my dad, when I was a kid, I mean, I'm a Navy brat. And so we were expected to say, yes, sir, no, sir. And we stood at attention. And in fact, one of the things that I hated more than anything as a young kid was getting punished with having to stand at attention. I I hated that. I mean, you try to get a 5, 7-year-old kid to stand at attention for a minute, and if you budge, dad would add another minute. I hated that, right? The other thing that I appreciate now that I really hated as at the time was, if we were fighting, sometimes in addition to having us stand at attention, he would have us hold each other's hands. And two brothers holding hands when they're mad at each other is not a fun thing, right? But dad would make us do it. And he's like, look, you guys got to learn how to love each other. You got to learn how to work through problems. You got to learn to respect and be considerate of each other. Just because you want the toy doesn't mean that he doesn't want the toy. So you need to learn how to share. So I think that, I would remind myself that, hey, they're just kids. Don't be so demanding. Don't be so harsh that you build an environment where your children are afraid of you. I think a lot of dads move through their house in a manner that is domineering, it's demanding, it's my way or the highway. And so the kids, rather than learning how to explore, learning how to make decisions, they are kind of confined in this little dad box that he has set that doesn't allow them to make decisions. And that's one of the things that Judy and I have tried to do. I'm not sure if I was completely successful at it, but we've tried to allow our kids, especially when it wasn't the things that are critical, right? Allow them the freedom to make the choice. It's like, all right, you can make this choice. These are the potential outcomes. Which one do you want to do? And allow them the freedom to make those choices and then experience either the consequence and or the blessing that it comes accompanies that decision. I think the other thing that I would encourage myself to do with my kids is let your kids explore. If they're interested in science, man, figure out a way to tap into science projects. Take them to the local university and have them go to an astronomy class where they can go in and see a telescope. If they're into art, encourage them to take art classes, maybe even pay for an extra art class. Do art with them. I mean, one of the things that Cinches often does is she goes to the 99-cent store, buy some canvas, some color paints. And she said, all right, we're going to have a painting night. And man, that's been so much fun. In fact, there's 2 pictures on our wall that our kids painted, right? And she actually posted them. She was really excited to do that and experiment with that. I think too, that if you're going to allow your kids to explore, that you need to set boundaries or expectations on what they need to do. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, if our kids wanted to play basketball or they wanted to run cross country or they wanted to be in jazz band or they wanted to be in choir, any of those things, they had the opportunity to do those. But we set a stipulation that if you're going to do it, you have to do it for a season. That could be a semester, that could be, the fall season, it could be the spring season. You had to go from the beginning to the end of a season so that you would experience the decision and the excitement of doing this new adventure, but you also would experience the challenge and the low point of that experience of having to work through training and practice and exercises. And, because I think a lot of times it's easy for us to create an environment where our kids go, oh, what? I don't like this, so I'm just going to give it up, when they haven't really dug in and experienced the entire process of something. And I think that's important, that we teach our kids to go through the process of something that they're interested in. I mean, one of the things that's really fun right now for me is my son is taking an interest in coding. So he's learning JavaScript and he's coming up, and I'm not a great coder. That was back in the day, but it's creating an environment where he's asking questions and he's digging in, but he's learned how to work through the challenging points because in the past, we set that expectation that if you're going to try something, do it for a season. So I would strongly encourage that you set that boundary. Allow your kids to explore, but make sure that they do it for a season so that they can experience every single aspect of it. I think too that my dad was really good about this is he involved us in big decisions, big moves. I remember when my dad retired, he said, "Look, I really want to go back to college and or I want to go to college and I want to become a nurse. And this is going to require some sacrifices by everybody in our family." And so not only did he involve us in the counseling of that decision and say, "Look, this is the impact and this is what's going to be required for the next couple years," but we were able to see him work through the process of going to class, of coming home, doing homework, going to work in the morning, and doing all of the steps to make that dream come to pass. So I think it's important that you allow your kids to see you make big moves, especially if it's something that is helping you become a better husband, a better father, or it's just helping you pursue a dream that you have, something that you're interested in. I think that you need to allow your kids to see you love your wife. My dad was really good about every day coming home, putting his arms around my mom, saying, "I love you. What can I do to pick up now that I'm home?" Right. I have always tried to do that same thing. Right. My kids sometimes like, "Oh, dad, why you're always kissing on mom?" Right. When they were younger, they were a little embarrassed about uh, a little embarrassed about it. But as they got older, they really appreciated it, especially when they heard their friends go, "Man, I really like the way your mom and dad interact with each other. I love the feeling in your home." Right. So let your children see that you love and you care for your wife. And I recognize that some of you have difficult situations. Maybe you're going through a divorce, or you have gone through a divorce, or there's strain in your relationship right now. I think you can work through that, and your kids need to see you working through that until that point where obviously some things don't work out and they need to see you moving forward in a positive direction. In fact, I think about somebody that's really close to me right now that's going through the beginnings of a divorce, and he's been very cognizant of what his children see him doing. He wants the kids to see him investing in them, making time for them, right? And sometimes even though the relationship may be strained and it may be dying, if they can see that you're working to make it right for them as well as for yourself, and being respectful as much as you can through the situation, but being honest with them. I think a lot of dads mess up when they're not honest with their kids, right? It's just like when I started my business, there were lean times and we had to be straight up with the kids. Like, you know what? Right now, things are really, really tough. I could use your prayers. I could use your encouragement. I don't have to get in all the nitty gritty of the details. They don't need to know that, but they do need to see you working through a challenge and how you're solving it. I think in addition to that, they need to see you counseling with your wife. I think a lot of men, they have this idea that they have to bear everything on their shoulders, on their back, on in their mind and in their heart when they have the greatest asset right next to them. And so many times they don't include their beautiful wife in the decisions and going, "Look, this is what I'm struggling with. What's your insight? What's your perspective? What would you do in this situation?" I mean, there's a lot of times where I've been a little frustrated, with some employees or business partners or a situation. And Judy will hear my frustration and she goes, Do you want me to give you some advice? Do you want me to give some insight from a person on the outside looking in that's close to you that can see a little bit of all the sides. And I have really, really appreciated that. And so I would encourage you to make sure that your wife is a key part of the decisions and counseling together, of moving together and building dreams together. I think too, over the years, as I've done this podcast, there have been so many men that I have talked to that did not have a good father. They didn't have a father in the home, or he was abusive. He was an alcoholic. He was addictive. He was a workaholic. All he did was, demand, demand, demand. It was his way or the highway. And so there was fostered in their home an absence of a father. There was a neglectful father. There was an abusive father. And so they have struggled with, all right, how do I be the father that I would like my children to have? And I've thought a lot about that because some of you may have had an angry dad. I guess this is where let me back up. I think what I would do is recognize and list the things that you did not like about your dad, or that you wish that you would have had in your dad. So if your dad was angry and you hated that he was yelling and domineering, become patient, become gentle, become kind and loving, become empathetic. If your dad was a yeller, be purposeful in being soft spoken. If your dad was stubborn, learn to be open and understanding. If he was a workaholic, set aside time for your family. Judie and I, every Monday night was dedicated for family time. We gathered our kids, we sang songs, we played games, we went out to ice cream, we made cookies. Monday night was dedicated to the kids. We went on the boat. Friday night or Saturday night was date night. So we had that time for our kids. And that is one thing that I would not change. I would not change that we dedicated time for our kids, but we also dedicated time for each other. And I would strongly encourage my younger self to keep doing that, to never miss a day. If your dad was overbearing, become gentle. If your dad had an addictive personality, was alcoholic, or had addiction to drugs, strive to be clean and sober, to be temperate in the things that you do. Learn how to control yourself, your appetites, your passions, your desires. Some of you guys may have had a womanizing father. So, be a loyal man, be a loyal husband. Go out of your way to be loyal. I think I don't know if this would be the number one, but it's way up there. I think that I would tell my younger self to forgive yourself when you mess up. There is no manual for being a dad. There is no manual for being a husband. There's no, I couldn't, get a manual for 34 years of marriage. Judie and I were writing the manual together, right? And as you're having kids, you're writing the manual because you're getting exposed to questions and challenges and opportunities and fun and trying times and sickness, all those things, right? And you have to learn how to work through them. And you're not always going to make the right decision. You're just not. We're human. You're going to let your impatience get the best of you. You're going to let your temper get out of control sometimes. And when those moments happen that you're not at your best, forgive yourself and strive to not only be better, but do better. And in conjunction with that, go to your kids and apologize. Tell them Hey, you know what? I'm sorry. In that moment, I was not the best dad that I could have been. I was not the dad that I want to be for you. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to strive and I'm committing to do a little better. I know I'm probably going to mess up in the future because I'm human just like you are, but I'm going to strive to be a better husband, a better father to you. I'm going to try to be your dad. I'm going to try to be your confidant. And so those are a few things that if I were to sit down with my 27-year-old self, I'd say, look, remember they're kids. Allow them space to be kids. Be gentle, kind, be empathetic. Allow them to explore. Be their biggest fan. Walk the journey with them. If they're interested in something, you become interested in something, even if it's not necessarily the thing that you like. Because there's a lot of you athletic guys that, man, you even think about science or astronomy or anything like that. You go, oh man, that talk to your mom, right? Instead of being interested. One of the greatest gifts that you can give your kids is being interested in who they are and what they love. I mean, one of my favorite memories is that only happened about a year ago. I went down to San Diego and my son Zane loves the Grateful Dead. And we were down there on the oceanside beachfront and there was a band and they were playing some awesome Grateful Dead. And to just watch my son light up and dance and have a good time and just embrace the music because it was touching his soul. And watching him, the music touched my soul because I was present, I was interested, and I was connected with him. So don't miss those opportunities. Guys, I don't know. I hope these items help you. I mean, some of you already have kids, right? You're well down the road. Your kids are between 7 and 20, right? That doesn't mean that some of these lessons still don't apply to you. What can you do better today to be a better father, to be more present? I mean, my kids are all moving out. I still have 3 in the house, but one's about to head off, one's planning on going to Texas, and one's building a business, right? And one of the fun things is like sometimes Cinch and I, we go work out together. And Ashton and I, sometimes we play Risk or Monopoly. I mean, he loves those games, right? And with Christian, he and I talk about his dreams, his aspirations. Oh, what do you think if I do this, right? Don't miss out on those little moments to be present because, man, those little moments, when they're stacked upon each other, one after the other, build a lifetime of memories, of love, of tenderness, of happiness, of sorrow some days, but of being connected. And that's really what it's about. It's about being connected to your kids and to that beautiful wife that's yours. So anyway, guys, just a few thoughts. Hopefully these will help you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you would do differently, what you would change, what you would become, because you know what? We can all learn from each other. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And we would check you same time, same bad channel right here on Father's Fire. See ya.